"I'm sorry, would you like to take my seat?" Victor Andrews asked, already standing before the woman could respond. She blinked, clearly stunned as the bustling train rattled beneath them. Her heels had to be killing her, and the crowded New York subway at rush hour was no place for someone dressed like she just walked off a runway-tailored cream coat, soft curls, flawless red lipstick, and an aura that screamed she didn't belong underground with the rest of them. "I thank you," she said finally, her voice warm but hesitant. Victor offered the seat with a tired smile, adjusting the backpack slung over his shoulder. His 6-year-old daughter, Leila, clung to his hand, her purple puffer jacket slightly askew and her glittery unicorn lunchbox swinging from her wrist. "You sure, Daddy?" Leila looked up at him. "Yeah, baby. We'll be off in 2 stops." He ruffled her curls and moved to stand behind the woman now seated beside Leila. The woman glanced at him again, her curious gaze lingering. He was tall, broad-shouldered, in a worn navy coat and scuffed boots, clearly exhausted but alert, protective, grounded. She caught the way he kept a hand on Leila's shoulder, his eyes scanning the crowd like clockwork. When the train jerked, her knee bumped the child's. "Sorry," she murmured. Leila grinned. "It's okay, you smell like flowers." The woman laughed, surprised. "Well, that's a first. She tells the truth," Victor said, trying not to smile. The woman looked up at him again, and this time something passed between them. A flicker of curiosity, recognition, no, but something. She looked ready to ask something more, but the train screeched to a halt. "This is us," Victor said, gently guiding Leila toward the door. "Thanks again for the seat," the woman said. "No problem," he replied. And just like that, they were gone. 3 days later, she saw him again. Vivienne Archer didn't believe in accidents. But when the same man from the subway walked through the revolving doors of Archer and Sloane's glass tower, holding a small paper lunch bag, and checking a printed visitor's badge on his coat, her perfectly planned morning unraveled. Her assistant, Tim, trailed beside her. "That's the guy from maintenance," he said, frowning at his tablet. "He's here to inspect the heating system on the 22nd floor. Vivienne paused. "Does he have a daughter?" Tim blinked. What? Never mind." She straightened her blazer. "Send the building manager up to escort him. Make sure he gets everything he needs." "Sure. Want me to send coffee to your office?" She nodded absently but didn't move until Victor disappeared into the elevator. By noon, she was still distracted. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd given her that seat without hesitation, how he'd held his daughter's hand like his life depended on it. She'd grown up in a world where kindness often came at a price, but he hadn't asked for anything. He hadn't even known who she was. And maybe that was what pulled her in. Because Vivienne Archer was CEO of a multi-million-dollar real estate firm, and men usually saw her last name before they ever saw her. Later that afternoon, she heard laughter from the lobby. Curious, she stepped into the hallway and spotted him again kneeling beside a vent, sleeves rolled up, grease on his knuckles. Leila sat cross-legged beside him, eating a cookie. Vivienne's heart stuttered. "You brought her with you?" He looked up, startled. "Oh, miss." "Archer," she raised an eyebrow. "You know who I am." "I do now," he said, standing. "I didn't on the train. I figured." She glanced at Leila. "You probably weren't expecting to bring your daughter to work." "She had a half day at school. My sitter canceled last minute." "I had to bring her with me." Vivienne crouched beside the girl. "Hi again," Leila beamed. "Hi, flower lady." Victor looked mortified. "Leila." "It's okay," Vivienne laughed. "I've been called worse." "I didn't want to cancel the inspection," Victor added quickly. "I know how strict your company is on deadlines." "That's very responsible of you," he straightened. "I try." Vivienne found herself offering him a tour. It was impulsive, unprofessional, and totally out of character, but she did it anyway. As they walked, he asked questions. Not about her money, her power, or the fact that her office overlooked Central Park. He asked about the building's original architect, about the materials used, about how she'd started the company at 26 with nothing but a laptop and a loan she almost didn't get. "You built all this?" he asked, genuinely impressed. She glanced around. "Brick by brick," he nodded. "That's badass," she laughed. "Thanks." By 5 o'clock, he'd fixed the heating issue, and Leila was curled up on a leather couch in the executive lounge, asleep with her unicorn backpack under her head. "You're good with her," Vivienne said softly. She's my whole world. Vivienne hesitated. No one else helps. My ex moved to Florida last year. It's just me now. There was a long pause, the room quieted except for the hum of the city below. I don't usually do this, Vivienne said suddenly. But would you like to have dinner with me? He blinked. Dinner? Yes, he looked at her, really looked at her. Like an actual dinner, not a business thing, no business, just food and conversation. He smiled, slower this time. You're asking me out, I think I am. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know if I'm your type. You gave me your subway seat. You didn't flinch when I showed up in full CEO mode. You fixed our heating system in record time, and you brought your daughter to work without complaining once. I think you might be exactly my type. He stared at her for a long beat. All right then, dinner, Vivienne grinned. Pick a time, tomorrow night, 7, deal. After he left, Tim walked in looking stunned. Did you just ask out the HVAC guy? Vivienne turned, still smiling. No. I asked out the man who gave me his seat on a crowded train when he didn't know who I was. Tim blinked. You're serious? I'm very serious. And for the first time in a long time, Vivienne Archer felt something she hadn't in years, excited, curious, hopeful. Vivienne stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, trying on the third outfit in under 10 minutes. It wasn't nerves, she didn't get nervous. But her usual wardrobe of sleek pencil skirts and tailored blazers felt too sharp tonight. Dinner with Victor wasn't a board meeting. He wasn't a client or an investor. He was a man who'd looked at her like she was a person, not a name. She finally settled on a soft navy wrap dress that cinched at the waist and fell just below her knees. It was elegant, but not intimidating. She left her hair down, curling slightly at the ends, and touched up her lipstick. Then she paused at her jewelry box, hesitated, and chose the simple silver necklace her sister had given her years ago. The one she rarely wore. Tonight wasn't about making an impression. It was about something real. And real was rare in her world. She arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and was led to a corner booth tucked beneath low-hanging lights. It was one of her favorites, Italian, family-owned, quiet. Somewhere she came when she needed to disappear. When Victor walked in, her breath caught. He wasn't in his work clothes anymore. He wore a dark denim jacket layered over a crisp white button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His jeans were clean, boots polished, hair freshly trimmed. He scanned the room, then found her, and his whole face changed. You clean up well, she said as he slid into the seat across from her. I was about to say the same thing to you, he replied, though I'm guessing this is your version of casual, she laughed. You're not wrong. A waitress arrived with menus and they ordered wine and appetizers. Once she left, silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged with curiosity. So, he said, leaning slightly forward, are you always this spontaneous? Almost never, she admitted, but you made an impression. He tilted his head, still not sure how. I'm just a guy who fixes things. Maybe that's exactly why. Victor studied her for a moment, then glanced at the small candle flickering between them. You don't do this often, do you? Go on dates? No, let people in. She took a sip of wine. I don't have much room for it, usually. My life is full by choice, partly. You don't get to where I am without sacrificing a lot along the way. He nodded slowly. I get that. She looked at him, intrigued. Do you? He met her gaze without hesitation. I used to be a contractor, ran my own crew. We built custom homes out on Long Island. Long hours, high pressure. Then Leela came along and everything shifted. You gave it up. Had to. Her mother and I imploded fast. I couldn't risk being on job sites 12 hours a day with no backup. So I sold the business, downsized, and started doing repair work. Less money, more time with her. Vivienne studied him. That's a big trade, he shrugged. It wasn't even a question. She sat back, watching him. You know, most men in my world wouldn't have made that choice. Maybe that's why your world needs a little shaking up. The corners of her mouth lifted. Is that what you're planning to do? I haven't decided yet. Their entrees arrived, breaking the moment. They ate slowly, talking about everything but work, music, books, childhood stories. He told her about growing up in Queens, about his grandfather who taught him how to fix everything from a leaky faucet to a broken heart. She told him about summers in Maine with her mother before the divorce, about the dog she lost at 13 and never replaced. It was easy. Easier than it should have been. When the check came, Victor reached for it. Vivienne froze. I asked you, she pointed out gently. Doesn't matter. I'm paying, she raised an eyebrow. You're aware I probably make more in a day than you do in a month. He looked at her, unwavering. I can still pay for dinner. She stared at him, then let him, not because she had to, but because he needed to, and something about that felt good. Outside, the night was crisp. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave. I don't usually say this after one dinner, Victor said, sliding his hands into his pockets, but I'd really like to see you again. Vivienne nodded. I'd like that too. He glanced up at the sky, then back at her. You free Sunday? She thought about the meetings, the emails, the endless calendar alerts, then she thought about him. I can be. There's this spot by the river where Leela and I go. She loves feeding the ducks. You'd like it. I like ducks, she said, smiling. Good. He hesitated, then stepped closer. You know, I was worried tonight would feel unbalanced. In what way? You're used to a world I've never touched. Private drivers, glass towers, expensive wine. And you think that makes you less? No, but I wasn't sure if it would make you uncomfortable. She looked him dead in the eye. I've never been more comfortable. He exhaled slowly, visibly relieved. All right then. She glanced down the street. Your train's that way. Yeah, yours? I had a car drop me off, he nodded. Of course, she waited a beat. Come on, I'll walk you to the station, he laughed. You, on foot, she nudged his arm. Don't act so surprised. They walked in silence for a few blocks, the city soft around them. When they reached the entrance to the subway, he stopped. This was a good night, he said. It was. He didn't reach for her, didn't try anything, just stood there, steady and certain, so she leaned up and kissed him. It was brief but full, warm, surprising, and enough to leave them both breathless. When she pulled back, he looked stunned. I'll see you Sunday, she said, turning. Yeah, he murmured. Sunday. Vivienne slid into the backseat of her waiting car, heart pounding. She didn't know what exactly had just started between them, but she knew one thing for sure: it wasn't going to be small. The river was colder than Vivienne expected. She pulled her coat tighter as they walked along the paved path, the Hudson stretching out like a glass mirror to their left. The trees lining the bank were nearly bare, their last leaves clinging on with stubborn defiance as wind tugged through. Leela ran ahead a few steps before circling back toward Victor, holding a small paper bag filled with breadcrumbs. She wants to be the first to feed them, he said with a quiet laugh. It's a thing. Vivienne watched the girl skip forward, her jacket too big and her boots squeaking with each step. She's got a lot of energy for a Sunday morning. She's had 2 pancakes and half a bottle of syrup, Victor replied. I'm just trying to keep up. Vivienne smiled, but her gaze lingered on him. There was something different about him here. He didn't carry himself like the man who had walked through her office, building with tools slung over his shoulder. Out here, he seemed lighter. Not less serious. He wasn't someone who ever seemed careless but unburdened in a way she hadn't seen before. Do you come here every week? She asked. Most. Gives her a break from schoolwork. Gives me a break from, well, everything. They reached a small wooden dock that jutted out into the water. Leela leaned over the edge, tossing crumbs and squealing as ducks paddled closer. Vivienne stood beside Victor, the wind tugging at strands of her hair. Can I ask you something? He said, not looking at her. You just did, he chuckled. All right, can I ask you something else? She tilted her head. Go on. Why me? She blinked. Is that a trick question? No, I know what your world looks like. I've seen it. Guys in tailored suits with teeth too white and shoes too shiny. You could have anyone you want in that world, so why me? Vivienne looked down at the water before answering. Because you didn't ask anything from me, not a number, not a favor. Not a connection. You saw me when no one else did, and you didn't flinch when you learned my name. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't know if I was supposed to flinch. That's exactly the point. He glanced at her. You're not afraid of what people think. I've been judged since I was 26 and tried to get funding with no last name anyone recognized. If I worried about opinions, I wouldn't be here. I like that, he said. That fire. She turned to him, her voice lower. You don't scare easily either. I've seen worse than a powerful woman. Their eyes held. Vivienne felt it again, that pull between them that made everything else fade. Then Leela shouted, Daddy, I'm out of bread. Victor broke the gaze and walked over to help her. leaving Vivienne staring out at the water, her pulse louder than the wind. After the ducks had been thoroughly fed and Leela had declared them the happiest ducks in New York, they strolled toward a nearby cafe. Victor held the door open, and the warmth inside hit like a wave. The place was small, with mismatched chairs and black and white photographs hung crookedly on the walls. Vivienne chose a table near the window, while Victor ordered hot chocolate for Leela and coffee for them. When he returned, she noticed the small smear of chocolate on his sleeve and the way Leela leaned into his side without hesitation. "You ever wish you had more help?" she asked. He looked up. "Help with her, with everything." His fingers traced the handle of his mug. "Sometimes. But I'd rather do it alone than do it wrong." She understood that. More than she let on, Leela interrupted their quiet with a question. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Vivienne hesitated. "I think so." "Are you gonna come back next Sunday too?" Victor gave his daughter a gentle nudge. "Leela, what?" she said, sipping her drink. "I'm just asking." Vivienne smiled. "I wouldn't mind coming back." "Good," Leela said. "You don't talk to your phone as much as Daddy's other friends." Victor rolled his eyes. "Okay. That's enough marshmallows for you." Later, as they left the cafe, Victor walked her to her car. The street was quiet now, the city slowed by the chill. She leaned against the door, her keys in hand, and for a moment neither of them said anything. "Thanks for coming," he said finally. "You make it sound like I did you a favor. I mean, I did bring you to a duck pond and a cafe with chipped mugs. I've had worse Sundays." He stepped closer. "I wasn't sure if this would work, you and me. And now, I still don't know," he said honestly. "But I'd like to find out." Vivienne nodded. "So would I." He looked down at her keys, then back at her. "What happens next, you could call me," she said. "I don't have your number." She reached into her bag and pulled out a card, handing it to him. "Now you do." He took it, tucking it into his coat pocket without looking. "I won't use it unless I mean it. I know." Their eyes met again, but before anything more could happen, Leela called from down the block where she was already halfway to the train entrance. "Come on, Daddy." "We're gonna miss it." Victor gave Vivienne a reluctant smile. "Duty calls." She watched him jog after his daughter, his hand catching hers before they disappeared down the steps. Vivienne slid into the driver's seat and closed the door. For once, she didn't reach for her phone or check her calendar. She just sat there, her fingers resting on the wheel, her heart full of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time, possibility. The next morning, she walked into her office to find Tim holding a tablet with a frown. "There's a problem with the ventilation system on the 34th floor. Call the building manager," she said. "I did. He's out of town, said he's sending someone else." She glanced at him. "Who?" Tim looked up. "Victor Andrews." Her lips curved slightly. "Tell security to let him through." "And Miss Archer?" "Yes." "You're smiling." She didn't answer, but when she turned toward her office, the smile only deepened. Vivienne stood at the edge of the ballroom. Her heels sunk into the plush carpet as the chandeliers above glowed with a warm, golden light. The Archer and Sloan Winter Benefit was in full swing, an annual event she typically coasted through with graceful speeches, a few photo ops, and a quick retreat before dessert. But tonight, things were different. She wasn't watching the door for a client or a donor. She was watching for him. The string quartet played a soft rendition of La Vie en Rose, and guests in black tie moved like clockwork around her. Waiters glided past with silver trays, and champagne flutes clinked beneath the soft murmur of Manhattan's elite. She was used to this navigating opulence, steering conversations, commanding attention without ever needing to demand it. But tonight she didn't care about the gala's silent auction or the board's whispers about a new development on the West Side. She cared about whether Victor would show. He hadn't committed when she invited him 3 days ago. "I don't know if I belong in a room like that," he'd said, standing in the elevator of her building, tool bag in hand, eyes steady but unsure. "I don't even own a suit," she'd only said. "That's not a reason, that's an excuse." He hadn't answered, so now she waited, unsure if he'd walk through the doors or if he'd decided that their worlds were too different, too far apart. Her assistant approached with a tablet and a tense smile. "The mayor's office just called. They're stuck in traffic but still attending. The press wants to know if you'll speak before or after the auction opens." After, she said, eyes still on the entrance. You sure? That'll push dinner back, I'm sure. She stepped away from the conversation without waiting to hear more. The room felt too warm, the lights too sharp. She passed a laughing couple and caught her reflection in the mirrored wall, every inch, the polished executive in her backless navy gown and diamond drop earrings. No one here would guess that under it all, she was hoping a man who once fixed her heating unit would walk into this room and change everything. Then the doors parted, and he walked in, her breath caught not because he was out of place, but because somehow he wasn't. Victor wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made for him, the cut sharp enough to draw attention but simple enough to keep him grounded. His tie was slightly loosened, and he held his shoulders with the same quiet strength she'd seen in him from the beginning. But it was his eyes that undid her the way they scanned the room, found her instantly, and didn't waver. He walked straight toward her. She met him halfway. You came, she said quietly. You invited me. I wasn't sure you would. He glanced around, then back at her. Truth. I almost didn't. I figured. But then I figured, he added, if I can build a roof from the ground up, I can stand under a chandelier. Her lips tugged up. You clean up well. You look like something people write songs about. She didn't blush easily, but the compliment caught her off guard. That's a dangerous line. I meant every word. Before she could answer, a photographer approached. Miss Archer, a quick shot for the press. Victor began to step aside, but Vivienne reached for his hand. He's with me, she said. The flash went off, capturing the moment, his rough hand in her manicured one, their expressions unreadable but unmistakably connected. Afterward, they found a quieter corner where the music softened and the crowd thinned. Leela, Vivienne asked, with her aunt. She built a gala fort out of couch cushions and demanded snacks on trays. She's got good instincts. She gets them from her dad. He looked around the room again. This is your world, all of it, for better or worse. You ever get tired of it? Sometimes, but it's mine, I built it, I won't apologize for that. I'm not asking you to, she studied him. Then what are you asking? I'm asking if there's room in it for someone who doesn't come with polished shoes or a pedigree. Vivienne stepped closer, her voice low. I'm asking the same thing just in reverse, he exhaled slowly. It's not the money. I don't care about that, I know. It's the feeling, like maybe I'll always be the guy in the service entrance. You're not. I don't want to be a novelty, the rough around the edges story you tell at brunch. She touched his chest just above his tie. If that's what I saw when I looked at you, I wouldn't be here. His hand covered hers. I know you're used to control, that you run every room you walk into, but I need you to know if I'm in this, I'm not a passenger. I wouldn't want you to be. The music shifted into something slower, softer. Around them, couples began to dance beneath the chandeliers. Dance with me, he said. She hesitated. I don't usually. I don't either. She gave him her hand. They moved together, slower than the music demanded, but perfectly in sync. Her head found its place beneath his chin, and his hand settled at her waist. For a few minutes, the world fell away. No boardrooms, no contracts, no headlines, just them. After the dance, she stepped back, her eyes shining. Come with me. He followed her through a side hallway, then up a private staircase. At the top, glass doors opened onto a rooftop terrace adorned with strings of lights and a view of the city that stretched for miles. I come here when I need to breathe, she said. He looked out at the city. Looks different from up here. It always does. She turned to him. Victor, I don't want to keep doing this in pieces. I don't want to see you between meetings or run into you fixing something in my building. He met her gaze. What are you saying? I'm saying I want more. I want real. I want weekends and weeknights. I want coffee and bedtime stories and mornings that don't start in separate boroughs. I'm not asking for perfect, I'm asking for possible. He took her hands in his. You already have it. The wind whispered through the terrace, but neither of them moved. Victor reached into his jacket pocket, then paused. I didn't come here planning this. I didn't even know if I'd stay longer than 10 minutes, but I picked this up on the way. He pulled out a small velvet box, not the kind that screamed diamonds or extravagance. Just something simple, wrapped in truth. Vivienne opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a small house with a tiny crescent moon carved into its roof. I know who you are, he said, but I also know who I am. And I want to build something with you, something that doesn't need to impress anyone else." She closed the box and looked up at him. "You already have." He leaned in, and she met him halfway. They kissed beneath the city lights, not for show, not for storybooks, but for the promise of something finally real. 3 months later, the Archer and Sloan offices buzzed with a new kind of energy. Vivienne walked into her boardroom, her heels silent on the polished floor. Her assistant followed behind, reading off the morning schedule. Meeting with the mayor's office at 10, site inspection at noon, and a press interview at 3. Oh, and Victor called. He said he'll be by later to drop off Leela's science project. Vivienne smiled. "Tell him to bring coffee." "Already did. He said he knows your order better than you do." She slid into her chair. "He's not wrong." The window behind her framed the skyline, but her eyes weren't on the buildings. They were on the life she'd found in the most unexpected place. Not in the towers she built or the deals she closed, but in the man who gave up his seat and changed everything. Vivienne didn't expect the call. She was in the middle of reviewing a zoning appeal for a new waterfront development when her phone lit up, displaying an unfamiliar number. She nearly declined, but something told her to answer. "Miss Archer," a woman's voice asked, hesitant but polite. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I'm calling on behalf of Brookhaven Elementary. It's about Leela Andrews." Vivienne stood slowly. "Is she all right?" "She's fine." "Nothing urgent, I promise. It's just, her father isn't answering his phone, and she listed you as her second emergency contact. She's a little upset. Said she was supposed to be picked up half an hour ago." Vivienne was already grabbing her coat. "I'm on my way." The school was in a quiet residential neighborhood in Brooklyn, a world away from the polished chrome and steel of her usual surroundings. It was modest but cheerful, with murals on the walls and a playground out back. When she entered the front office, a secretary greeted her with a relieved smile. "She's in the reading corner," the woman said. "She's been asking for you." Vivienne found her curled up in a beanbag chair, her unicorn backpack beside her, a picture book open on her lap, though it was clear she hadn't been reading. Her eyes lit up when she looked up. "You came," Leela said, voice small. "Of course I did." Leela wrapped her arms around Vivienne's waist in a silent hug. It hit Vivienne harder than she expected. "Did something happen?" she asked gently, crouching so they were eye level. Leela nodded, her face scrunching up. "Daddy was supposed to get me, but he didn't come." "Did he say anything this morning?" "He said he had a job near the bridge. He gave me 2 hugs and said he'd be on time." Vivienne stood, her mind racing. She thanked the school staff and drove Leela home herself. When they arrived at Victor's apartment, the lights were off, and his truck was gone. She pulled out her phone and dialed him again. No answer. Leela looked up at her. "Is he okay?" "I'm going to find out." Vivienne called the site manager for the bridge renovation project Victor had mentioned once in passing. It took a few minutes of fast talking and name-dropping, but she finally got someone on the line who confirmed Victor had been on site that morning and then left in an ambulance after falling from a scaffold. Her heart stopped. She called the hospital next. 2 hours later, she and Leela stood in a sterile hallway, the scent of antiseptic thick in the air. A nurse led them to a private room, and there he was sitting up in bed with a bandaged shoulder and a sheen of exhaustion across his face, but alive. Leela ran to him first, climbing gently onto the bed. "You scared me." "I know, sweetheart," he said, pulling her close. "I'm sorry." Vivienne stood back, her breath caught halfway between fury and relief. "You didn't think to call me?" she asked. "I didn't have my phone. I had to leave everything at the site. You listed me as her emergency contact. I didn't expect to need it." "You're not invincible, Victor," he sighed. "I wasn't trying to be." She sank into the chair beside his bed. "You fell 10 feet, dislocated your shoulder, and bruised a rib." "That's not nothing. I've had worse." "That's not comforting." Leela leaned against him, already drifting off with her head on his chest. "She waited for you," Vivienne said softly. She kept checking the clock. "I know." They sat in silence for a moment, then he looked at her. "I don't want her to go through that again," he said. "Then don't let her." "I mean it, Vivienne. This scared me, not the fall, the thought that I could be gone just like that I could leave her without a word, leave you." She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "I've been dragging my feet," he said. Telling myself it's too soon, telling myself we're from different worlds, but the truth is, I've known since the night you kissed me outside that restaurant. She didn't blink. I want to build a life with you, not pieces of one, all of it. Every part. You're saying that now because you're scared. No, I'm saying it now because I'm done being scared. He shifted slightly and winced. There's a ring. It's in my coat pocket. I was going to wait a few weeks, plan something. But Vivienne stood, walked to his coat draped over the armchair and pulled out a small box. She opened it slowly. Inside was a gold ring with a single oval-cut emerald framed by tiny diamonds. Understated, personal, beautiful. He watched her, breath held. I wanted something that reminded me of you, he said. Classic, but not ordinary, strong, sharp, and not like anything else. Vivienne didn't say anything. She walked to his bed, took his good hand, and slid the ring onto her own finger. I say yes, she whispered. To all of it. His shoulders sank with relief. You sure? I'm not just sure, I'm ready, he exhaled, his hand tightening around hers. I love you, I know, she whispered. I love you too. They held there with Leela asleep between them and the city quiet outside the window. Several weeks later, on a sunlit afternoon in late spring, Vivienne stood beneath an arch of blooming dogwood trees at a small estate in Hudson Valley. It wasn't the kind of wedding her board had expected. There were no press releases, no magazine coverage. Just close friends, soft music, and a little girl who scattered flower petals with deliberate care. She wore ivory. He wore dark blue, and when she walked down the grassy aisle, their eyes never left each other. I never thought I'd end up here, she said, when it was her turn to speak. I always hoped I would, he replied. They exchanged vows, they wrote themselves, his hands trembling slightly, her steady and sure. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Leela squealed from the front row, and Victor kissed her like the world had just reset itself around her lips. The reception was held in a garden strung with lights and laughter. There wasn't a single investor or socialite in sight, just people who knew their story and loved them enough to witness it. Vivienne danced barefoot under the stars. Leela sat in Victor's lap during the toasts, proudly holding the mic and declaring, "Now we're a real family." And they were. They didn't return to a penthouse or a marble-floored estate that night. They returned to a house they'd picked together. Something old with charm, on a quiet street with a porch swing and enough space for dreams. She kept her name at work, but she added his to her mailbox. He still worked with his hands, but now he only took jobs that let him be home for dinner. She still ran the company, but now she had someone waiting for her when she got home. And every Sunday, without fail, they fed the ducks together.